Those who would like to continue, first let me say thank you. Thank you for those of you who have come out to join us in recognition of Gun Violence Awareness Month. I am Chandra Dawson, for those who don't know me. We started this last year, and it was in response to our recognized need to make sure we are very intentional around supporting, recognizing and raising awareness around the needs of survivors of gun violence. Particularly, most often than not, we see an acute response when someone is directly impacted by gun violence, but what we know for individuals and families and communities who have had to navigate this, the need for ongoing support and resources extends way beyond that acute moment or those first initial days and before a trial or beyond a hospital release. And so we wanted to ensure that we took the time to remember and as well just center the needs of survivors and, you know, outline that they are not invisible. We recognize and we see them. What I will say, you know, this is a hard topic for many. Most of us in this room have some type of connection to gun violence. You may personally identify as a survivor, and in this space, how am I defining a survivor? 3 different ways. A survivor could be an individual who was actually shot. The survivor could be a family member of someone who was directly impacted by gun violence, and that person may not even be with them anymore, but the family is navigating that space as survivor. But then there's this collective group of survivors, the community. And so between one of those 3 categories, we all find ourselves. And so this is a conversation that will center survivorship from that perspective. I want to be sensitive to the needs of everyone in the room. I want to make sure to the best of my ability this is a safe space, and so there will be moments where it may look like I'm tongue-tied. I'm not tongue-tied. I'm trying to be very careful in my selection and use of the language. And so I would ask that, because we do at some point have a QA or just a more general conversation, that we want to be cognizant of that. Even with my best intentions and our collective intentions, this still may be a hard space for someone. So I would just ask that you really be intentional, listen to what your body is communicating to you. Feel free to exit as you see fit, whatever the case may be, and we want to respect that. If in fact there is a moment when we open it up to larger conversation, and you are asked maybe a question or whatever, and you can decline. You have full autonomy in this space, but we want to make sure, to the best of our ability, that this is a safe environment, and that is going to take a collective effort. So, Gun Violence Awareness Month. Some may know the history, some may not, and so I just want to briefly touch on that. Hadia Pendleton, a young lady, 15 years old. She was here in the district for President Obama's second inauguration, and she was part of the parade. A week later, lost her life to gun violence in Chicago. And so her family and friends selected the color orange as they celebrated her life, not her passing. Orange was selected because that is the color that hunters wear to protect themselves from gun violence. And so that's where orange came from. And so about 2 years later, June the 2nd, this became what became a local recognition and issue around awareness became a national movement. And so here we are. And so really it was birthed out of survivorship. And so I wanted to make sure that we not just only recognize the day, but remember why we are here and where that came from. I do want to take a pause. Because I think it's only respectful When I say survivor, that means something different for everyone. And so I do want to honor the survivors who are with us, but I also want to honor those who are no longer with us. And so if you all would just join me for a brief moment of reflection as we celebrate those and their resiliency, for those who are with us, in the families, in the communities that are represented, but also the legacy of those who are not with us. So join me, please. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I am up here with my esteemed panelists, and so I am excited about that. And so what we did last year, the conversation was definitely more centered around the individual survivor and individuals sharing their survivor stories and things of that sort. We went a different angle today, this year. We wanted to, again, still be true to the needs of survivor, but we said, well, let's bring in the stakeholders. Let's bring in the stakeholders and the partners that are critical to doing this work. And so I am joined with 3 of the 4 panelists. I believe one individual is en route, but I'm going to do, now you all, these bios, I was like, each one of you, I could stay here for a lengthy amount of time, but just to kind of give a brief overview of who's joining us. Directly next to me, Director Jennifer Porter, thank you. Dr. Porter, excuse me, that's the hint, there you go. There it is. That's next, we'll talk about it. Director Porter serves as Director of the Office of Victim Services and Justice Branch. She stepped into the appointed role in 2023, where she leads the district's work in supporting crime victims, preventing violence, and advancing the evidence-based justice strategies. She is a Howard-trained biologist. Any HU in the building? HU? HU. Go ahead and do it. Go ahead. A Howard-trained biologist with a master's in public health from George Washington University and a master's certified health education specialist. Prior to stepping into the role of leadership within OVSJG, she directed the Office of Women's Policy and Initiatives and spent more than a decade in public health and adolescent health advocacy at Children's Hospital. Her career and bio includes focus around research and particularly centering adolescent sexual health, HIV prevention, and she has held multiple leadership roles. She has been recognized nationally, including honors from the Academy Health, National Minority Quality Forum, and GW's Milken Institute School of Public Health. I've had the pleasure of meeting Director Porter and working with her when I was working in the sexual assault space. And what I will say, regardless of the role, you have been the same. You have showed up and again in the true example of leadership, commitment, integrity, and more. And so I am honored that you had the availability. Well, you probably didn't have the availability. You probably didn't make the availability to come join us. And so thank you, Dr. Jennifer Porter. I'm going to keep seated next to Director Porter is Jessee Lyons. Jessee is the managing attorney for the legal program at Volare. Many of you may know Volare as NVRDC, National Victim Recovery. NVRDC, I haven't said it in so long. What did it used to stand for? Network for Victim Recovery of DC. Okay, see, when you close to them, you can just say the acronym. She supervises as legal program manager, as a managing attorney, a team of attorneys dedicated to providing high-quality, trauma-informed, and survivor-centered representation for survivors of all types of crimes here in DC. The primary her focus with her work with Volare is medical legal partnership with MedStar Washington Hospital Center's Community Violence Intervention Program, which allows for collaborative referral of survivors to crime victims' rights, legal services, and a gateway to other legal services. Again, this is another partner that prior to me coming into the public safety space, I had the opportunity to partner with then in the RDC and the leadership team around SAVR legislation. I work collaboratively with them, a long-standing stakeholder for crime victims, DV, sexual assault, and more. And so I'm excited to have you join us. Thank you. Next to Jessee is Keisha Jones. Keisha serves as I say our because she's part of Peace for DC staff, and she serves as our trauma-informed psychotherapist and seasoned clinical social worker with over a decade of experience supporting youth and adults navigating housing instability, mental health challenges, and systemic barriers. In previous roles, Keisha has provided individualized therapy through the utilization of evidence-based modalities with a strong emphasis on motivational interviewing and restorative practices. She has a very diverse background, professional background. I think that truly, enriches your approach to therapy and how you show up and not just support the individuals, but the overall organization. And so I am excited to have Keisha join us up here as well. So please join me in welcoming Keisha. There is the panel, and so I got it right, Director Porter. I'll start with you. And so OVSJG's mission, and so I took this straight from your site. The mission of Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants is to develop, fund, and coordinate programs that improve public safety, enhance the administration of justice, and create systems of care for crime victims, youth, and their families in the district. And so in reading that mission, there were some questions that I had that I thought, you would best speak to. As the district's arm, in terms of local government, centered around victim safety and care needs, how does OVSJG create this system of care for gun violence survivors through the use of funding, programming, and policy development?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having us. And I say us because no one leads alone. I'm Jennifer Porter, but I'm proud to lead the district's Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants and the amazing public servants who work every day to fund healing here in our city. And for those of you who know me, I go hard about this team because they work hard. Many of our team is consisted of returning citizens and survivors who believe in this work, and we fight every day internal battles that you may not know about, but also our public battles to make sure that survivors are centered in our conversations around public safety. Survivors are centered in our conversations around housing, that survivors are centered in our public planning, and even things that a lot of our public planning doesn't think about survivors. We try to make sure in many ways that they are centered and that we are centered. And so we are grateful for what we believe is that really solemn role. And so in particular, when it comes to gun violence is something that a lot of people feel the impact of, because of the media coverage and because of it being categorized as a community-based crime in a lot of ways. But we try to make sure that there are opportunities to platform the voices of all of those spectrums that you laid out of first and secondary responders, to make sure that our government response looks like the healing that's needed. And so the way that we do that is on an annual basis. We produce and conduct what we call a consolidated request for applications. And there's a lot of work that goes into preserving that process. There's a lot of work that goes into advocating for that process, but there's a lot of work that also goes into preserving that process. And so we believe that the solution is closest to where the problem is. And so where in other jurisdictions, the Office of Victim Services, they are government officials and individuals who are providing those services to survivors. Well, we believe that solution is in the community. So we fund community-based nonprofits, like many of our partners who are here in this room, to be able to conduct and to provide and to heal our community. And so every year, internally we call it our Super Bowl, because we work through the whole year to prepare the process, but we compete both local appropriated funds that the DC City Council gives us, and all throughout the year, we're also applying for and competing for federal funds that we also push out in the community. And so our team, they are number crunchers. They have to work really hard to make sure that they are making sure that the federal compliance for the district for these awards is maintained so that we can keep that money flowing through the community. And I'm proud to say that we are absolutely in compliance and we keep the money flowing. So we know that competing funds is not enough. We also know that there are amazing healers in our community that are great at what they do. They're healing out of their basements, they're healing out of their pockets, but they may not necessarily be or have the capacity to run a business. And of course, in DC government, to get funds, you have to be incorporated and you have to be registered, and there's certain compliance. So we're also really proud that while that standard, that is the government standard, can't change, we created a lot of ladders to help people to get there. And so every RFA that we compete, we retain capacity building support. Every single applicant can have someone to review their application. They can ask questions independent of the agency, and we did that, and I did that intentionally so that it's not the folks that are reviewing the applications that are helping you or whatever perceptions around that. But we also are really proud to have a capacity building program where we work with organizations that we find in communities that are doing amazing work, and we want them to be competitive even beyond our portfolio. And so to get back to the question, I'm sorry, it's a long answer, but we know that healing is important, and it's important to advocate for it, it's important to destigmatize it, but we have to fund it. And so we're really proud to be the DC agency that does that.
No, I appreciate that, thank you. I think what stood out to me were all the things, but I was not well versed, so thank you for sharing in terms of the real intentionality around that capacity building piece and recognizing, healing is not just, it's very individualized, and it should reflect the diversity of the individual or family or community that you are serving. And so, yes, and many who are doing phenomenal, impactful work aren't at the place where they can compete with this larger group of individuals for the needed funding. But I appreciate the agencies, one, recognizing them and validating their work, and then with that, providing them the needed development so that they can at some point. I think, all agencies don't do that, and I can say that, you can't say that. But, I really appreciate hearing that. And so for those who are in the room who do represent, that group or body of individuals or budding organizations, and you recognize you are not at that place to compete in this larger group or with this larger group for services, but you are committed to and valued, I would say, as a healing partner. OBSJG is saying that they are an agency that is here to not just support you, but they welcome you. They welcome you. And so I think it's important to really name that. Now, I know the climate we are in, and I don't sit in your seat. I sit in it and impact and feel it from the position of leadership for a nonprofit. I cannot imagine sitting in it from your seat as it relates to a government agency. And so with that, what are some current challenges that your agency, you all are currently being confronted with that really impact your efforts to support gun violence survivors? And what is it that we collectively as community, and community does not just mean district residents, but overall stakeholders, do to support you all?
Wow, that's a great question. Thank you for that question. So there are a couple of ways that you all can support us. One of the things that's important to me and my entire team in terms of the way that we fund and having to make what we consider life or death decisions in terms of what we fund each year, because there is a limited amount of funds, but it's incredibly important to us, alluding to what I shared earlier, that the voice of the community is a part of those decisions. And so every year we put out on a rolling basis a call for peer reviewers, and peer reviewers are a very big part of our selection of grantees. A lot of times I get questions, Director Porter, hey, why aren't you funding more in the place of gun violence? Why aren't you funding more in sexual assault? Well, one, the first question is, we can only fund what comes to us in terms of the applications. And even that is not enough, which is part of the reason why we created our capacity building programs and things like that. But also, we follow the voice of the community. And so having the opportunity to serve as a peer reviewer, we're always looking for peer reviewers. We also know there are barriers that exist to peer reviewing. So we actually have fought for and earmarked funding. We we pay each of our peer reviewers because we know there's a sacrifice of their time. And so there's a lot of equity and intention in everything that I do and everything that my team does. But you can be a peer reviewer. Now, if you are looking for funds for the organization, unfortunately that precludes you from that opportunity, obviously. But if you know individuals that are passionate about this work, we are constantly working to make sure that our peer reviewers, that we continue to update that list and solicit individuals. I think another way is to apply, obviously, but I am also proud of one of the roles that the agency plays as a convener. And as a convener, it is important to us in these some systematic reviews of fatalities and or our convenings of our Victims Assistance Network, our Reentry Action Network. Those convenings, we rely on them to hear a consensus of the voice of the community. And that's also important to me as well, because I can hear the voice of one person, and as you can imagine, well, Porter likes this person, or Porter, I am a friend to all, but to my team, it's important that we actively seek a consensus of different voices so that we can really get a hold of the needs of the community, while also being able to highlight and understand voices that are marginalized, that are not at city council hearings, right? That don't have an organized coalition around them. And so I think you can participate in some of those coalitions, but also let us know, like, the voices that we're not hearing. For those of you all who know me, I'm out, and if you don't see me, it's probably because I either wasn't invited or I didn't know about it. And we do really try to make time to be in community. And so I think inviting, and sometimes that can feel like not a safe space where government is, but that's also part of the reason why there's intentionality around the way we fund on a community-based level. Because we're healing maybe spiritually informed. We're healing for you may include, medicinal practices, or it may include cultural practices. Government can't do that. And so we're proud to be able to fund on the community level. I share this story often about my two little ones. I have a 6-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter, and I share often my son, I can give him children's Tylenol, 2 hours later, he's fine when he's sick. But my daughter, when she's sick, I could literally be in a meeting with the mayor. I have to stop everything I'm doing, because the only thing that will make her well is being right up under mommy. And so I shared that contrast because it really is an example of how we heal. Our healing journeys are all very different. And so being able to make space for that is incredibly important. And so as diverse as our funding portfolio can be, you all can support us by saying, hey, OVSJG has money. I heard from the director, she put the challenge out. She wants there to be a diversity of healing. And then the other piece to that is us also being okay with our community evolving. And I think that's one of the biggest ways that you all can support, because when I first picked up this portfolio, my question was, what are the sources of pride, and what can we say after 50 years is not working? And so being able to have those really important and vulnerable conversations around what needs to shift, and being able to be committed to that shift is a way to support our work.
Thank you. And as I listen, one of the large pieces that I hear out of anything is the theme that government needs the community. And more often than not, and the community may not always feel that. And there's some real reasons to the why. But I think I hear you saying, especially, well, at least as it relates to your agency, that you are saying we need the community to be able to effectively do what we do and be impactful. And so I think the challenge and the charge for the larger community is we have to acknowledge our fear and trepidation that some of us may feel as it relates to engaging with government. Some of us may have to acknowledge that the two can coexist. It's not all community and it can't be all government, and it shouldn't be. But there has to be a partnership, and so I do think, there is some, I think, maybe the internal relationship piece between the community and the government that I think we both, as a member of, you representing government, me representing community, have to take some accountability about and do some reflection in order for us to move this along. Because it is very easy to say the government didn't do. And likewise, it is very easy to say, well, the community is this or not doing this. And there may be, in between any of that, some elements of truth. But identifying that and figuring out how do we move past that for the need, because that's the thing. And I think at the end of the day, I want to believe we both want the same thing. We both want the same thing. So no, I appreciate that. So thank you. We're going to pivot again now. Director Porter mentioned OVSHG's role in creating this system of care. And so legal support and advocacy is a critical part of that systems of care for all survivors of violence, particularly, gun violence survivors. And so, Jessee, if you could, let's start with an overview of Volare's legal program and the services and supports that you all provide specifically to gun violence survivors.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me today. So at Volare or Volare, there's no right way to say it. Even at our organization, people say it differently within. So, but we offer holistic services to survivors of all crime in DC. That includes therapeutic services, advocacy, case working services, and legal services. And I'm an attorney working in our legal program. So we, specifically for survivors of gun violence, we offer representation and brief advice and brief services in all throughout the criminal legal process. So from the investigative stage all the way through trial or post-conviction matters. And when we represent survivors, it's not only the person who experienced the crime, but it could also be the surviving family member if the person is no longer with us. Specifically, and my specific focus is with the Community Violence Intervention Program at MedStar Washington Hospital Center. And there, that CVIT program, they do a warm referral to Volare for survivors of community violence. And we have an attorney who will go to the hospital and do a bedside providing brief advice, informing the survivor of their rights while they're in the hospital or the rehab center. And their needs in that moment may be as simple as my phone was taken as evidence and I want it back, right? I need it back, right? That's your connection to, for many people, a lifeline out while they're healing. And so that's one of the most common things that we provide people while they're at that very acute moment in the hospital, and is communicating with the detectives and finding out, do they really need the phone? Can they give it back? Is there information on the phone that they can take off and then return the phone? And so trying to meet those immediate needs, informing them about their right to apply for crime victims compensation, helping them navigate that process, appeal if their application was denied, things like that. Just as simple fact as informing someone that they have the right to not speak to anyone, that can be very empowering to somebody. But also, when you're in the hospital, your focus is on healing and what's next and processing what has happened to you. So sometimes people are not interested in speaking to an attorney right then, but they, if we follow up with them a few months later, oh yeah, I remember hearing about this, and yeah, I'm interested, and maybe at that point the investigation has moved along, things are happening, and they have new questions. So they're already connected to us, and it makes that barrier to access legal services and to just simply be informed of what their options are, lowers that barrier for them. Yeah, I don't know, did I answer the question?
You did.
Okay.
You did. No, you did. Thank you. And just for clarity, and so to make sure I hear, so if someone is physically impacted by gun violence, and again, I'm being choicy with my language, you all are in partnership with MedStar, where if they come to the hospital, you all are notified.
Yeah, so MedStar has a program that's completely separate from us. It's called the Community Violence Intervention Program, where they, speak with people who've experienced community violence, and they sort of find out if they are interested in participating in their program, which is designed to offer them support and connect them to services. And the idea of CVIT programs, and there are many around the country, it's not unique to Washington Hospital Center, but the theory is that someone who's experienced gun violence is at an increased risk of experiencing that again, or harming someone else in the community. And so the idea is how do we disrupt that cycle of violence? And one way can be to provide people with support. And one way that Volare is involved is to make people informed of their legal rights that they have as someone who is a survivor of a crime. You have legal rights throughout the criminal legal process. And I think another thing that Volare really prides itself on is that we are survivor-centered and trauma-informed. And as Director Porter was talking about, there are so many different ways that survivors seek to heal, so many different paths, and that is so individualized. And so even within the legal framework, as attorneys representing survivors of crime, we approach it in a way of there's no one right way for this person to feel like they have achieved justice or healed in their journey. And that may even look like choosing not to participate in the process, choosing not to cooperate with law enforcement or prosecution. People feel very strongly about the impact of law enforcement and incarceration on their communities. And at Volare, helping the survivor communicate their desire along the criminal legal process is part of centering the survivor and being trauma-informed. So we would never say you must participate. We would help them communicate and help them understand the impact of their decision and support them communicating that to law enforcement and the prosecution. What was I saying? Lost my train of thought.
That happens to me often, so don't worry.
Yeah, so
my staff will tell you.
yeah, and I think that yeah, I don't know.
No, I think as I'm listening to you, and again having my own close familiarity with Volare, I think what I would hope that others are hearing is that this is also a strategy really rooted in prevention and intervention as well. If we know that someone who has experienced gun violence, there's a very high likelihood that they will experience it again, retaliation. This is also a crisis response. Let's get in, let's wrap around care, offer care, and in efforts to prevent that. The other part to this is even in implementing and having a real genuine crisis response, respecting self-determination. It is not important as to in regarding in terms of why and what happened. That's not important. What's important is that you are empowered and wrapped around with the needed services, and you have the accessibility that you choose how you want to navigate it to support. And so that is the value of that approach. And so I definitely want to make sure, and you conveyed it by all means, but for me listening, that sometimes gets lost in terms of the why behind the strategies. And so I appreciate that. And I think individuals in that moment, while they may not understand that as the why, and even the family and things of that, but I think it's important for us to remember there's a great deal of, again, you're going to hear me say this a lot, intentionality around how that service was designed, the training that goes with it, how it's implemented and evaluated. Sure.
I think it's also space, place, and time is important when we think about this. And, without getting too political, I think it's incredibly important, and we're incredibly proud to be able to fund legal services as a part of the continuum, particularly for the District of Columbia. And what it means to be a part of a system where we don't elect our judges, where we don't elect our prosecutor, and the reality that everyone across this country who is participating in the legal system and or who is surviving and navigating that system, they are expected to learn what individuals have spent 3 years in law school learning and understanding and nuances and new laws, while also going through grief, right? And the reality that it is different for us in the District of Columbia. And I think that is part of the reason why I believe you all have Volare here, because I think it can be lost on us a lot of times that we are disproportionately impacted by our system, and that their survivor-centered focus really does lend itself to a survivor who can say, what justice means to me may be a stay-away order and me being able to live my life and my former partner still being able to gain their income and that income going to our children. Where justice for someone else may be the experience of incarceration, and what that means may not be justice for me, right? And so being able to have a legal advocate to help navigate that system is incredibly important, and incredibly important for us here. So I wanted to.
No, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Jessee, as standing on the same line and just hearing not just what your team does or Volare overall, but particularly as a attorney, but how you have to do it. Now, I didn't go to law school. My grad was in social work, but I think, is it safe to assume you're not taught trauma informed and all of that in law school? So if you could just, speak to that, what for an attorney or another legal advocate that is very interested either in moving into this space as it relates to healing, what in addition to, we could focus on the educational requirements and things like that, what are those other skills or key qualities that one has to bring to this role in order to be successful?
Yeah, well, you're lucky you didn't go to law school. And there are so many ways to support survivors and impact your community in similar ways without going to law school. But anyway, I think trauma-informed training and understanding how to interact with someone who's experienced trauma, and then how to support them in an ongoing way is really crucial for all, so many people working to support survivors in the community. But I mean, honestly, it should be a part of law school curriculum, because so many clients in family law and people whose homes are being foreclosed on, all of those people are experiencing some kind of trauma. So it's very important for an attorney to understand how to support their client in a trauma-informed way. And, you know, it starts with, at Volare, we do a pretty intense training with our attorneys that we're onboarding, and we, you know, give them training about how trauma affects the brain, affects memory, affects how people process events and can store and recall their memories. And so that's why when you're speaking to someone, you know, they may recall things differently or speak about things differently over time because memory changes and their experience of their trauma changes. And similarly, you know, as they go through their process or their journey with us through the criminal legal system or the civil legal system, their goals may change. Their idea of what healing looks like for them may change. You know, it may start off one way and end up on the completely opposite spectrum of the other. And so being able to be intellectually flexible and non-judgmental and allow them the space to change their mind and approaching it from a framework of you are helping a person become empowered to reclaim their power in their life, and something the trauma was an event that took power away from them. And so this is one way that we can support people to feel like they've taken something back that was lost. There are studies that show that, you know, a survivor, if they are represented by an attorney, if they are heard throughout the criminal legal process, even if the result is not what they described that they would have wanted, if they are heard and treated with dignity and respect, their experience is much better. The way that they report how they experience the process, and it's not about the result, it's about their treatment and their ability to participate and feel heard.
Thank you. You know, first, intellectual flexibility. I'm borrowing that. I'm just going to let you know. So I definitely will give you your kudos in terms of where I got that from. But I think the other piece, you know, what you're saying is really the goal is you need to have the skills, not just the development through, you know, law school or social, you know, whatever your education is that makes you qualify, should I say, in terms to serve in these kind of roles. But the goal is that you are delivering services in such a way that you are not re-victimizing the individual. And so, you know, I cannot imagine, and I've seen it play out over my 20 plus years as a social worker in various roles here. And I cannot imagine as a survivor of gun violence, be it the individual that experiences it, or a family, working with an attorney who does not understand that this is a traumatic experience. The demands that you place on me or my family, what you are expecting, just as simple as terms of response time or how eloquently or clearly I can articulate, it requires someone to understand and really, have a real understanding of trauma and the impact on the body and the nervous system. Also understanding that as attorney, they represent a position of power. And not only am I a trauma survivor, you know, as it relates to the gun violence, but especially when we're talking about individuals of color and other identifiers, knowing how to navigate that. And so that can be a lot and really impact the whole process. And so, you know, I appreciate you and other attorneys and other organizations such as yourself that recognize it's not enough for me to have that JD and all of that. There is this ongoing development, professional development, that is required and essential for me to be able to do my job and do it well. And so appreciate that. Thank you. Ms. Jones, Keisha. And so, you know, we've heard in terms of, so we have OVSJG where they, as a government agency, as part of their mission is the responsibility of creating and supporting systems of care through many ways for survivors, through funding, outreach, things of that sort. You've heard from Jessee with Volare, who is a member of that, a critical member of the systems of care that is supported fiscally by LVSJG. And so now another piece, a very equally critical piece as we talk about the systems of care, is the behavioral health or mental health needs. And so Keisha, and I know you share the same sentiment that, the trauma needs of any survivor of violence can be that, and I'm struggling because I see it on a daily basis. I know it. So let me name that. I know it as well. And the trauma needs look very different from person to person, family to family, community to community. Likewise, we understand and know that we are talking about a supply and demand problem here. There aren't enough quality, trained professionals or practitioners that represent the therapeutic and clinical space to be able to support the needs of trauma survivors for the long term. See, that's the other piece. You might be able to tap into something in the moment, but it's that long-term piece that we're talking about beyond the 90 days after I'm released from the hospital. And so with that, if you could, and I know you could have days just on that, if you could outline from just your observation and your experience, the trauma impact on gun survivors, and again, for the individual, the family, and the community.
Thank you for that question, and also thank you for having me. I guess when people think of gun violence, they often think about the moment that the shot happened, and we as therapists, we know that gun violence doesn't end with the shooting. The healing journey begins after, right? So the individual impact, when we're saying that, I'm immediately thinking about when I first started working with gun violence survivors. I remember one of my first sessions, one of the participants kept looking out the window. He was looking over his shoulder, he was jumpy. It just positioned himself in the corner so he could see around him, peeking out the door. And I remember saying hey, you all right? He yeah, I'm all right. And and in that moment, I'm oh, I remember sitting after that session, and I'm damn, he's really traumatized. This is hypervigilance. I'm looking at it, I'm seeing it in the session with him. And that's how, when we are survivors of trauma, we become hyper vigilant. We lose that part of ourselves where we're feeling like we can be safe, even in our own homes. To someone who's unfamiliar with trauma, that constantly looking over your shoulder can look he's paranoid, he's tripping. But no, from a trauma-informed lens, he's severely traumatized, and he needs help to cope with his environment and feeling safe in his own home. So that's when we're talking about the individual impact. As a family, one thing when people don't understand is the survivors are the only people who are impacted. The person who was shot, the family, sometimes the person who was shot sometimes doesn't make it. And the family is left to deal with that. The family is left to put the pieces together. They're planning funerals. After the cameras and visuals and all that stuff is over, they're trying to explain to their children why their father or why their mother isn't this, why they're not here anymore, how to engage with them, and then left without mentors and left without parental figures, and that trauma lasts for generations. It's not just stopping because, this kid's parent is lost. No, it impacts that child, it impacts the grandchildren of that survivor. When we talk about the community, neighborhoods begin to operate in survival instead of safety. People stop sitting on their porch, children stop playing outside, neighbors are strangers. Community experience repeated cycles of fear, grief, and loss. Research calls this community trauma. When violence becomes normalized, people don't necessarily become less traumatized, they become more accustomed to carrying the trauma. That chronic stress affect schools, businesses, healthcare, relationships, and future generations. So I think that was the community. Yeah, that was it. But yeah, everybody's impacted, not just the individuals, community and family as well.
Thank you for that, you know, as you're talking, and like I said, we see this, and I'm sure many of you see it, live it, you know, as a survivor. And again, remember those 3 different categories of a survivor. You know, when my assessment as well as experience with this is that incident, that traumatic incident of, again, the gun violence, often, almost, not even often, always unearths other areas of trauma that have not been healed or even addressed. And so, you know, I lose a child, I'm hypothetically speaking, to gun violence, and then I in turn begin to have to address fiscal needs. And then the fiscal needs, if I'm, you know, economically don't have it, or I have a history of just not being able to meet my needs financially, the trauma, you know, whatever goes with that. And so all of this is connected. And so many therapists, and you know, I'll say it as a practitioner, aren't always versed in understanding the intersectional needs of a trauma survivor. It's not just the gunshot may be the why that they're in front of you, but you have to understand that this person has multiple identities and has experienced multiple things that this one traumatic incident is connected to. And so for me to be able to properly support you in your healing journey regarding the grief or the loss, I too have to be postured and positioned in such a way that I'm skilled, and it really is skilled, to be able to support you in these other areas that are connected to this. And so we see this a lot, you know, for those who aren't aware, Hill DC, you know, and Keisha serves as the therapist for that program, where we work with gentlemen who are trapped in a cycle of violence. And we cannot just focus on the violence. We can't. That's a narrow lens when we think about healing. And again, healing is so broad, but when they're in our space, and you know, I'm looking at Adam, one of our partners from a wider circle, and Georgina, we've seen it, even their focus is workforce development. Well, we see that the ability to get a job, and you need to maintain a job, but we got to deal with the trauma needs so you can successfully not just navigate the interview, but keep the job. And so that intersectional approach is so critical. It's so critical. And so with that, however, we know, and by no means am I suggesting gun violence is a black and brown issue. What I am highlighting is the unique needs of black and brown survivors. And with that, we know, as a member of the black and brown community, there is a real stigma with mental health and behavioral health. We've seen it. I grew up in it, you know, where, you all right, girl, or go pray. Or whatever, take a nap, whatever. We came up, you know, and, you know, culturally, that is a challenging topic and area of health and well-being that we have to navigate. With that, can you speak to how that particular stigma, as it relates to for black and brown individuals, or those who represent marginalized, you know, economic groups, socioeconomic status, how that impedes healing, the healing work, from a therapeutic standpoint?
Absolutely. The biggest barrier to healing is the stigma, right? As we've discussed, the first thing is getting them on the call to even have therapy. And that in itself is a challenge, because they have heard that I'm black, I don't need therapy. We don't do that. That ain't something we do. I had, you know, and have people worrying about what the societal standards are for what a man is supposed to be. I have to stay strong. I can't let this break me. I have to retaliate because that represents a signal of strength for some people. And we all know like healing cannot happen in isolation. We need community. So behavioral health is a big has a big impact on healing for survivors. But the big thing is the stigma around it. Helping people to understand that their reactions are normal. Like, it's okay to hurt, it's okay to cry, it's okay to not feel strong in this moment, it's okay to grieve. People haven't heard that, and the first time that they often hear that is in like these groups that we have for programs like Peace for DC, to hear like, it's not your fault, like what happened to you, it's not your fault. That's the first time that they're hearing that when they're walking into our offices. And that part is important, but the biggest barrier is getting them there and letting them know that therapy is for everybody.
You know, I appreciate that. And again, identify, if it's not, I don't want to say obvious, but I identify as a Black woman. And I know in my community, you know, and I've seen it, you know, as I said, growing up as well, that the stigma really was rooted in a lack of understanding around behavioral health. But we also have to look at historical trauma. You have to understand what marginalized communities have experienced as it relates to tapping into medical supports. There's a lot of trauma with that. We can go down the list. Well-known Tuskegee Airmen, you know, we can go. And so this inherent distrust is not something that is just fictitious on the part of those communities or my community. That is something that is a product of trauma we experienced. We experienced, and I think it is important when people talk about that stigma, it's not that we're afraid of therapy or we don't believe in it. We have to protect ourselves, and that's what happens when you are a member of a marginalized community. You have to protect yourself. You can't depend because other systems or individuals who hold privilege mistreated us, did not protect us. And so it is the same thing. So when you think about a gun violence survivor, he or she feeling like, I couldn't protect myself outside, and now you're asking me to come in here, I'm trying. Again, so there again is that intersectional piece of, I really am now at the heightened level of need for safety, and you're asking me to come in here and be vulnerable? I don't trust you. Talk about hypervigilance. You want me to talk? I don't know. And so I really think this is the charge for all of us in the room. What role, and I've had to ask myself many times this same question as a practitioner, as a mother, as a family member, what role are we playing in creating barriers that prevent individuals from comfortably accessing the needed healing supports, be it therapeutic? Definitely grab the mic. Did you want the mic, Jim? Okay. What barriers are we creating collectively? You know, if you spend any time with me at Peace for DC, they hear me always talking about collective accountability. But, you know, one of the things we tell the gentlemen in our HEAL program, you very well may have made the choice to facilitate the gun violence. But what I will always tell them is that there were other contributors along the way that informed your decision to do that. And so there's accountability just does not sit with firing. There is a shared accountability amongst all of us who are in this room and who are not. And so that's the challenge in peace. What role are you playing in an individual's inability to feel safe accessing legal supports, accessing the needed therapeutic supports, engaging with government to develop real solutions that are informed by the community? And so that's an area of reflection for all of us. Dr. Gordon.
I appreciate the question of what are the barriers that we can all address to the barriers. And I just want to briefly touch on like the stigma of stigma, because I think we are also, particularly those of us that are doing the work in this space, we can kind of speak to those that are not in the work around the stigma of stigma. And I think when we think about post-traumatic stress as a disorder, a lot of times the picture of that as we destigmatize it is the crash out. is the like, suicidal ideation, is, severe alcoholism. And the reality is, and you talked a little bit about us being able to address the trauma from gun violence and it unpacking other traumas. The reality is, particularly in the African American community, we've been conditioned to cope. And so what trauma looks like, and being able to normalize what trauma looks like, it may not necessarily be a crash out. I talk about my beloved aunt and my namesake who had a closet that was sick. I mean, so many designers that I couldn't pronounce as a kid she had. And as a teenager, like the bracket on the wall broke because she had so many shoes and so many clothes. And it was something that as teenagers, we were like, she is that girl. Like, that's what we wanted to be. And it wasn't until she passed that I learned that it was actually a form of hoarding in her trauma. And so when we look at that, right, and now listen, your source of joy might be having every pair of Jordans that come out. Now, do you need 200 pair of shoes when you're in bankruptcy? Like, is it impacting your day-to-day life? And is that normal? Because it looks normal. And we actually, in our society, can glorify it. Girlfriends who are working out, like, girl, get it, like, get your health on. But then, is it compulsive? Is there a obsession connected to it? And that is trauma, and that's a trauma response. And I think we do have to go beyond this stigma boogie, like, crash out, to really normalizing, hey, there's a physical element. I've had headaches for the past 3 months. That's not normal, right? There's physical pain that I'm carrying in my back. And we're so conditioned as a community to carry trauma. How do we destigmatize, this is actually not okay for you to be carrying this in your back for 5 years? So let's think about and talk about what happened. And then the other piece I'll add to the stigma of the stigma, because this is like, y'all, as you can see, this is in my bones right now. I think we also are opening up dialogue around access to therapy, and it's important, and equity and cultural awareness is incredibly important, and I think we're having that conversation. But I think we also need to think beyond that conversation, and I'll share just openly in my own personal journey. It was actually a white therapist that named for me. I was having a conversation, I'm working hard and showing up early and staying late and trying to work my way up, and I'm trying to show up in this space of Black excellence, and and it was a white therapist who said to me, this Black excellence, like, you keep saying that, what does that mean to you? And I didn't realize what was a vestige of slavery and patriarchy that I was carrying in my Black excellence and showing up early and staying late that didn't actually serve me, but was a cultural piece that it took for someone outside of my culture to say, what is that? For me to say, oh, you're not carrying that. So you see it as trauma outside of seeing it as, yes, I'm in your culture, I understand it, but I may also be carrying it in a way that I've normalized it. And two things can be true.
Right. We
We also absolutely need culturally aware providers, and we need more, and we need to create ladders and lanterns and places. But I also think we are dying. And in my own healing journey, hey, you taking my insurance, we're gonna have this conversation. And in that journey, I'm like, wow, I was carrying some things. And so I think being able to say and understand that trauma doesn't always look like a crash out in our destigmatizing of it. I want us to have those conversations that every day, like being okay to not be okay. What does my okay look like? Does it look like carrying trauma in my bag for 5 years? This is my actual experience. I'm telling my business. And that healing journey of like, wow, I wasn't okay, and it wasn't a crash out. And so I think that's what we can do for each other, and I think we need to do that more for each other. There's actually a landmark decision yesterday, and I want everybody to read up on it, around availability of virtual therapy in the district. There was and I don't want to get too political on it, but access to therapy in the district may very well change because of that decision. I want everybody to look into that, but I also want us to actively be a part of how that shifts access and what we need. And so just encouraging everybody to tap into that.
Well, first, I'm big on honoring transparency. And so, it's not easy to be transparent, period, but definitely to sit up as a director, a mayoral appointed leader, and to show up in your humanity. And so, I think I have to acknowledge that and say thank you for that. And there's so many little nuggets. I'm like, okay, I need a part two, or maybe we should go to lunch because I could we could do that real good. But I think the other piece, when I hear, as I'm listening to you, and I'm sitting here, I'm a little challenged because I am one of those proponents of culturally responsive services. And I do believe there's value in therapeutic and legal supports and workforce supports where they bring the needed cultural skills to and awareness, and often I'm valuing just lived experience too, to support the healing needs of gun violence survivors and other survivors of violence. But now I'm saying, as I think, and you see me, I'm having my own conversation with self in front of you all, that too can be problematic. When you're talking about a scarcity and a supply problem, you can't dismiss or diminish the good work that is possibly available and accessible from an agency or a practitioner who doesn't look like you, or who's not sitting there on your corner, and so I think, again, there's that challenge. You can't dismiss Jess as your attorney because she doesn't look like me, where I could get someone who looks just like me and lacks the needed understanding of therapy, trauma, and all of that, and it's a harmful process. And so, I think this conversation, which has been great and very fruitful, it leaves us all at that personal place of reflection, but also accountability. Also accountability. Would join me in thanking our panelists. So definitely we're going to do a brief transition. If you didn't get your grub on, and it's getting real low. Wait a minute. I didn't get my grub on.
Yes, you did.
You did. Thank you. I appreciate that. My kids should have did that. See, I'm looking at them. Look at them. They like whatever. Brief transition, and it will move further along in our agenda. So thank you. And so again, this is where we are going to move into this conversation and really demonstration around wellness. You heard the panelists as we were talking, and we really approached the more traditional supports as it relates to behavioral health and healing from the perspective of a therapist, clinicians, things of that sort. But we recognize, like I said, there's some real apprehension around that network of support. There are some who wellness and healing is rooted in their belief system, in their cultural system, or their faith. And so we want to be sensitive to that and really just highlight there's no one size fits all to healing. The goal is just get healed, honestly. That's why just get healed, please. Commit to that work, whatever that means for you. And so I have the pleasure of introducing Tavon Johnson. And Tavon, you come on up. And so Tavon, I gave you this nice little bio, but I don't want to use it because I want to wing this. But no, Tavon is, and I can say this, a dedicated community advocate, a violence interventionist specialist, mentor, coach, and founder of Kaizen, am I saying it right? Kaizen, nope, didn't say it right. Kaizen Health and Wellness. And what is unique about his work and how he operationalizes it to support the community and gun violence survivors is he has a very unique skill set where he brings in the training and the work that comes with violence intervention, but it's also met with this understanding around wellness and body, mind, and spirit. And so, you know, healing, and you heard Director Porter mention, you know, the body, and it's a book, you know, the body tells a story. The trauma stays in the body. You may never shed a tear, but you can't figure out why your back is hurting. You may never shed a tear, but like, for some reason, I just can't sleep, or I can't get through the day without taking a nap. And so I think we, you know, are too fixated on the traditional presentation of trauma as well as the traditional modalities to help in healing and support. And so I appreciate that he is fusing those two worlds together. And so I'm going to hand this mic over. And so what he is going to do is speak to his organization and the work that he does and the why. And, you know, what I know is everyone has their why is not just rooted in passion and interest. Sometimes it's lived experience and pain. And so you can speak to that as you see fit, and as you feel safe. But I believe you also are going to lead us into a little bit of light. Now, I don't want to say exercise because we all gonna run out the door. Some demonstrations and things like that. Yeah, demonstrating, because I don't want to sweat. I really don't. And so, be gentle, at least with me. They may have it. So here we are. Okay, y'all.
Chandra said, I'm Tavon Johnson. A little bit of background, brief of how I got to this point of focusing on health and wellness, and the importance of it is I see a lot of professionals, I see people who've been impacted by violence and how it has touched their lives. I see both. I'm one of those who fell in the book. I was introduced into the world of gun violence. My family was directly impacted. It was something I didn't know how to process, but what I thought was helping me was just getting lost in it. So helping people, doing stuff for others, focusing on everything else but myself. And that led me to my profession, that led me to heights, that led me all over. But then I started realizing that I'm hiding from my pain. And I wasn't addressing my pain, and I wasn't focusing on me. And in that process, I would have my moments. Because remember, I'm still grieving too, I'm still working on it. Sometimes I have really bad days. Sometimes I have really bad moments, mentally, physically, any aspect you could think of. So with the help of people close to me and important to me, they put me in position to worry about myself. What can you do for you? Take time for you. You can't help everyone else if you're not helping yourself. So with that, I started my business with Kaizen, Health and Wellness, which is something that internally I had been doing the whole time. I just never put a name on it. I wasn't getting paid for it. But in our mission with Kaizen, and I'm gonna be transparent. When I talk about health and wellness and the mental aspect and the physical aspect, it can creep up on you at any moment. Like Chandra mentioned, sometimes it affects you mentally, in your mind. So you forget things, your head hurts. So for me, I don't know when it's gonna hit. I can't prepare to talk, I don't gonna have no notes or anything. I'm gonna need a little help. So to talk about our mission is to empower individuals to achieve lifelong wellness through education, healthy living, and personal growth, inspiring positive and sustainable change in every aspect of life. Mind, body, and spirit, right? Like I said, we're here for a reason. We're here for Gun Violence Awareness Month. We're here as professionals. We're here as those who are going through it. We're going to do things to help address it. We're going to do exercise to help address it. We're going to always make sure we, no matter what's going on, give back to ourselves. Be a little bit selfish. Give yourself a little bit of grace. You feel me?
Yeah.
Chandra, you stole a little bit of what I was going to say, but we cool. as we witness the grief, as we work through the grief, I want us to have something to take with us when we leave here so that we can use, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Our practice today is going to introduce something that we can take, and no matter what circumstance, whether we're high, whether we're low, we're going to do something to address specifically the mind. We focus on the mind, body, and spirit, but the mind is most important today. So I don't want to take too much time because I really want you guys to get into this activity. Everyone can stay seated. We just us getting started, getting warmed up. Chandra's gonna always talk about me working out because she saw me in action, and I usually would have y'all in with some boxing gloves on, running around doing stuff, but today we're working on our minds. So you're invited to, if you will. If I sit up straight, you know, let it come through, get situated. Flex your necks to the right, as far as you can. Flex your neck to the left. Go back. Go forward. Head up. 5 nice rolls with your shoulders. Now let's go forward. If you're comfortable, you put your hands in the air or put it right in front. As high, as far as you can. Stretch, stretch, stretch. I want you to take for one very big, deep breath. Release. Yeah, one more time. Now we can relax. Does anybody feel any type of calming? The drop, that's the release of the tension that we hold that we never recognize. Just that light practice, take a little bit off. That's the definition of Kaizen. Kaizen is incremental growth for success and productivity. Even if it's 1%, you're getting better. Take each day you can to get better, no matter what, no matter what's the journey, you taking your time. I live by the slogan, the right path is my path, follow your path and you'll grow. Okay? And with that, I want to be able to introduce Mr. Jermaine Fontaine, who is going to take us through hypnosis meditation. I heard explain it to you, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. Thank you, Tavon. Thank you, Chandra. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. My name is Jermaine Fontanelle. I am from the DMV area, born and raised, and I am a certified master hypnotist, and I do work as a hypnotherapist. I am from Behavioral Health Sciences Institute, aka Hypnosis Motivation Institute, that you've probably seen on Facebook when you're scrolling everything. It's a college in LA, founded by Dr. Kattis in the late 50s and 60s, right? So, who in here is familiar with hypnosis or knows what it really is? Not you, my son, that's cheating. Hypnosis, believe it or not, is just a trance state. I cannot make you bark like a dog. I can't make you cluck like a whatever. I can't make you do backflips off the roof. But what hypnosis do, as the name entails, hypno from the sleep god, is help ones get into a trance state to allow the subconscious to be open so as the operator, we can slip in and help clients or patients when it comes through with other psychologists through referrals to get into a better vocational and avocational self-improvement to help you change with your behaviors and habits. I don't do too much. I am here to help people recognize an awareness of their self. Let me break, since I dispelled that, let me break that theory down. When we are born, from birth to 8, we are learning positive suggestions, negative suggestions. Oh, I can smell grandma's cookies. What happens when that happens? You get a picture, a thought, you get a feeling, and the behavior after that, you might salivate. We want them cookies now. Negative is the dog, barking, doors, slams. You might start, since a youngin', those little shakes, that little unfavorable body syndrome that sticks with you, right? After 8 and 10, the critical filter kicks in. Now we have logic, reasoning, willpower. We're on our own. Mommy, daddy, can I do all of this by myself? We're a grown person now. As we're dealing through life, we get overworked, or what we call in my field, overload of message units. So what happens when that happens? We're all in a fray, right? We're all in our mind, it's cloudy. We're looking for any type of information to take to get us back in a good homeostasis. Now, as a hypnotherapist, I use the overload to help one get into a state so as the operator, we give positive suggestions to help you in awareness of these events that's going on. So as I say, it's for vocational and avocational self-improvement. And if it was something higher to where as though you have your psycho doctor or medical, we work with referrals for that to get it together. Now, if you're familiar with anything of like mindfulness meditation and things of that nature, it's kind of familiar with that. Question, who all can visualize with your mind's eye? Who all can see pictures with your mind's eye? Did you know everybody can't do that? For the ones that can't do that, it's called aphantasia. They understand through senses like data. And the hyperphantasias, they got the visual images. So sometimes when you hear people say, I don't see anything when I close my eyes, it's just all black. That's probably what's going on. So once again, this is not no magic show. This is not, we make it forget and it goes away, but what it does is help you when you are overloaded to breathe, get your breath back, so we can get the mind back and start regulating the emotions so we can move on in a better behavior and a better outcome. I've seen over 30 clients, done group hypnosis, group meditation, and man, let me tell you something. I thought it was all crazy at first until I realized FASFA was involved. You know, so like we get this business in itself really going. I would want us all, if you would like, to participate so you can see how calm, relaxing, and how beautiful hypnosis really is. Who would like to participate? I promise you are always in control. I cannot make you do nothing you do not want to do. That is, you see what the movies did to us? You see what? So this is what I would want you to do. If you can, sit up nice. If you're eating, you can just watch. If you want to participate, go ahead. You can sit up nice and flat in your chair, feet flat on the ground. And I would want you to put both of your hands out like this. And you can just have them separated. That's right, you can just have them out. And now that you have your hands out like that, I want you to kind of stare in the middle, in between your hands. And I just want you to stare there. And as you're staring, I want you to use the power of your mind and get a sense of a magnet. Just get a sense of a magnet. And as you're focusing, the hand starts to get closer and closer. Closer and closer. It can go at its own speed as you want, but just feel that tug and feel it in. And as soon as the hands touch, you will reach the highest peak of suggestibility to enter the state of hypnosis. Just closer and closer at your own leisure and let the hands come closer and closer until they touch. Once they touch, you can relax and put them down into your left. Once they touch, you can relax and put them down into your left. Absolute. Did everybody notice how on your own, without resistance, how your hands started coming in more and more? Your energy is where your focus goes. So when we use hypnosis, that's absolutely beautiful. You can relax and put your hands in your lap. Hypnosis is very relaxing. When people are overworked and overwhelmed, we are in an unfavored mind. We are cluttered. So we use different types of modalities to regulate the breath and get you in a calm state so we can input the positive suggestions to help you regulate these emotions. I got one more thing. I would like to take us all on a positive journey so I can show you how easy this is, and you can do this whenever you want with the power of hypnosis. I would want everyone When you are ready to just relax and close your eyes. You just relax and close your eyes. Now we want you to take in a nice, big, deep breath. Breathe in and then relax slowly. Let all those muscles, let all that tension go around your face, down your cheeks, down to your eyes, down to your feet. One more big, deep breath. And let it all go. Let all that tension of the day go. Let it dissipate. And just notice how calm and smooth your breath feels as it circulates through the body. Now, with the power of your mind, with your eyes closed, I would want you to envision a sun. It can be close. It can be far. I'll let you decide. Once you have the sun in your mind, in your area of safety, I want you to create a power chest. It can look however you want it to look. Inside of this power chest is a glowing orb in your favorite color. And this orb holds energy, motivation, and positivity. If you feel a radiant flux of energy fluttering around you now, that means your mind and your body is now connected. And that's how strong your mind is. The physiological response. I would want you to take this power orb and let it assimilate and absorb in your body. Feel that radiant energy moving through you. And just understand that you're doing it. You're always doing it with the power of your mind. And we can use this power orb as an anchor that's in your favorite color, so at any time, anything unfavorable comes along, you close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine your power orb. When you start to get the energy fluttering through you, it's working, and this power orb shall allow you to be motivated and full of possibility. And now that you all are in these comfortable states, I'm going to start to bring you up now from 1 to 5, 5 being fully awake, aware, and unsuggestible. At 1, you get a sense of the room around you. 2, you feel the energies fluttering through the body. At 3, you can hear the sounds around you. You get a sense of the people around you. 4, you might get a sense they'll want to smirk and smile as you come up at 5. At 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, eyes are wide awake. Eyes are wide awake. There goes all them smiles and smirks. That's what I'm talking about. How many people had a visual response? How many people had a physical response? Do you see how all that happened with the power of your mind? That's how powerful you are. So as well as we continue to go to the people that we need to for assistance, as you need it, know you also have power as well. We work in conjunction with psychotherapists. We do referrals for all vocational and avocational self-improvement for betterment and habit changing. You can go on the website houseoflightmd.com to reach me. You can come get a business card. And at the end of the event, if you would like to learn how or what your suggestibility is, which is how you take in information, just come see me. We can do a little quick test. We can learn and go from there. But this is how strong you are, because you have a house of light, and that's coming from House of Light. Okay.
Thank you again. Feel a little bit better? Incremental steps. That's what it is. That's what we do. That's what we focus on, and that's what's most important. We work with a lot of different people, a lot of different partners, just to find out what fits, what helps. We don't just get stagnant. We just don't focus on one thing or one group. We find different ways. We don't take no for an answer. We don't take our circumstances as the end. We search, we grow, we climb, and we bring it all back. That's what I said. In Kaizen, you find your inner growth. You move forward with that. So whether it's in the mind, in meditation, it's in the body, which we'll do, and I know Sean will talk about as far as the peace walk, taking care of yourself, getting back to yourself, treating yourself, as well as in the spirit, that building that self-confidence, self-belief, self-resilience to be able to get through whatever circumstances you're dealing with, personally, professionally. The goal is always growth. Thank you.
And so what you just experienced, and I hope you learned if nothing else, is that strategies for healing, you don't have to ascribe to the traditional therapeutic model. And so, now I'm saying this as a social worker, but I recognize that for many people that's not beneficial. That's not beneficial. For many people that doesn't align with their values. They won't find that fulfilling. And so I think what we just, for those of you who participated, but what you got to see is that there are options and many doors to heal. And for the gun violence survivor, and I say this for Peace for DC, especially my other nonprofit partners who are here, who really are working with folks in the community. This is not, most often than not, we're not working with the individual who is coming in with their Care First insurance and their primary care physician gave them a referral. That's not their norm. And so with that, you have to have a model of care that is outside of what you think is norm. And so again, if you're going to be community centered, and what I think accessibility needs to look like, accessibility is differential. That's how I feel about accessibility. It's individualized and differential. And so thank you for that. Listen, I need some hypnosis. What works to stop eating chocolate? Like what is that? I need level 4, whatever comes after that, because I'm the one that told them to re-up on the cookies. So get that. And so I probably need some more tips. With that, we are the last portion of our day, but I want to open it up to you all. I want to open up to you all and really just get a sense of how is this landing, what are some things, by no means is this panel and Tavon highlight all that is connected with survivorship as it relates to gun violence. And so there are experts in the room. And so I definitely want to create a space where you, as you feel comfortable, speak to it. And so one of the things, just with the panel, how did that land for you? Anything stand out? Anything you felt you wanted to add to it, Regina?
I think as a practitioner and always in the position of supporting others, having come to a point on my own journey where doing the inner work is absolutely essential. It is inevitable that you will be tested in the areas in which you are giving advice and giving support. And so I think the more we are in touch with who we are, the more effective we can be. And that the traditional way of training, the way I was trained back in the 80s and early 90s when I was in college, that has changed. It looks different now. And so being able to be transparent and share appropriately, I think is a powerful way to make connections with your clients, to build that trust and for them to see the humanity in you. So I heard that today on the panel. I think each panelist kind of touched on that quite well, and it's great to hear that people are not afraid to show their humanity even in their line of work.
No, I appreciate you naming that. You know, I'm young too, like Regina, and so I have had to sit and put a lid on what is going on within me, what my body is saying, what I have experienced or am experiencing, trying to show up for you. And I do think we do have to normalize the space. If you are going to be in this work in your various capacities, this is not just for the clinical folks. I'm talking the lawyer, I'm talking about the VI, whatever your role is, this work, and the other work too, but this work, if you are not comfortable in identifying your ouches and how, you know, we're real quick, I want to do it because, and I tell people, I'm like, you sure? Because I want you to understand what comes with this. If you're not prepared to start unpacking while you think you're helping everybody else unpack, this is not going to be for you. You won't have longevity here. And so I think survivors, trauma survivors, appreciate that level of professional vulnerability. And it is. I have had some moments where I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said or did that, or, you know, transparent moment, our heal group, and I facilitate our trauma group, and I'm bringing all these little tools to help the gentlemen center themselves. I'm the main one throwing the stress balls, squeezing, pausing, all types of stuff. And yeah, you know, I do believe you can do the work, but you have to be okay with visiting your own stuff, and knowing when to say, you know, for some of us, I need a minute, I need a moment, I need a new career. But I think that's fair to say. So I appreciate you for naming that, because there is this misconception that we can't be human in this work, and we don't give ourselves the permission to be courageous and name, I'm just as hurt, broken as you are, and I'm trying to help you, and so I appreciate that. Anybody else from the conversation, anything land for you want to speak to? Hey, Alexis.
Yes, just as a teacher, or as a young teacher, and with high school kids, and third grade, right around the street, it's just reaffirming to see or hear all of these different conversations from different professionals, from lawyers, a doctor, biologist, social or therapist, and then affirm that the CBI work is very timely, and also that it's for all people. This is my second year doing it, and I feel like I learned more in the second year than the first. I showed the kids actually after they graduated from the course the law of attraction. So it's funny to hear the hypnosis, because the law of attraction is addressing our subconscious thoughts and our subconscious mind, and that doesn't matter what happens in your day to day, what material things that you might have, because your subconscious mind is still doing the work and filtering through all of these different factors, your job, your house, etc. And it's just how teachers will come in and do the sessions too. So I just feel very affirmed and excited that it is a community conversation, and that all types of faces from all types of walks of life are here to be a part of it.
No, I appreciate that, Alexis. If you don't mind asking, Alexis is a teacher, she said at Thurgood. Is it social studies?
Yeah, social studies.
Social studies. And so Thurgood is one of Peace for DC's partners, where we go into the schools and facilitate CBT training for the students. And so we're at Thurgood, Dunbar, Ballou, Bard, okay. Nikita is our facilitator. But I say all this to say, gone are the days where the teacher's sole responsibility is teaching a curricula, grading tests, getting the grades in on time. Teachers got to be a whole lot more now, especially when we're talking about this conversation around gun violence. And so, kudos to Alexis and the other educators that recognize the well-being of my students, their academic performance is connected to their trauma needs. And not most teachers, we think about housing security and food insecurity, and I'm not minimizing that, but when you are teaching in a neighborhood with schools with children hear gunshots all day and night, have lost family and friends, been impacted in many ways, heard it on the way to school, gonna hear it on the way back, hear it sitting in the classroom, you have to change. You have to rise to the occasion and be willing to be flexible and come out of the traditional way in which you were probably taught, and meet that need. And so much respect to you and the other educators and your administrators, because you need that leadership to support that. Where they have brought in Peace with DC and other schools, partners, we're doing work like restorative justice in the classroom. And so that's critical, And so there's my plug to, we need more funding for more work such as that. One of the questions, I guess, if you don't mind, can I get comfortable now, because the formalities are over for me at this point. We've talked about what we're doing. I'm not, foolish. There are things we're not doing as a city. What's missing? When you think of survivors, and again, individual, family, community, what's missing? It's okay to say it.
Your
Collective accountability. Yeah. What's missing? Adam, you contemplate, and Eddie.
Well, I was just thinking about the earlier conversation you all had about the need for community capacity building, and how there's a lot of wisdom in community that doesn't necessarily relate to like being able to fill out a grant proposal and do all the grant requirements and the reporting structure and payroll. And so to me, that's a big need, and I'm glad you guys work on that. I mean, the more we can do, we have a small micro grant program that feels like a nice way to dip your toes in, right? Where it's only a couple $1,000s and it's not a huge application. So for people that are like, oh, I'm not ready for that, but maybe they can try some of these micro grants. But I'm just really convicted about that conversation, because I think that's something that's needed more capacity building, because there's a lot of people in communities doing a lot of important work. They're like anchors. But it's not always easy to prove the work that they do in a way that comes to financial security for them, right? And that's a real challenge. That's a real challenge. A lot of people doing great work, but they're not getting funded. They don't really have what they need to get that funding to come into them. So the more that we can do to build up that local capacity and spotlight people that are doing really important work, but it's not really being told. Because a lot of the violence interruption work, it's what doesn't happen that's the outcome. And that's a really hard thing for funders to wrap their head around sometimes, right? Is the things that could have happened if that VI wasn't there.
I appreciate that, and I'll add to this, and I may need security after I say this, so get ready. Everybody hold their breath over there like, where's she going? Capacity building is essential. Hear me. For those who are doing this great, phenomenal work in the community and aren't ready to compete, you have to understand that you need funding to be sustainable. You need funding. It's not a reflection of who you are, what you can and cannot do in the qualifiers. You need funding to be sustainable. The goal is to be sustainable. There is no value to launch and implement a service this year that's beneficial and that community that has grown and begin to tap into that, and you're gone. That's trauma for them. That is trauma. You have to be sustainable. To be sustainable, you need funding. To get the funding, you have to have the needed infrastructure. You gotta know how to run your program and your business. You have to have integrity. Nobody's putting their money in just anything. That's facts. Sorry, that's just facts. And so I think there's the other part to this conversation where I think many individuals that we're talking about, these real gifts in the community, I think sometimes feel insulted, or it's taking away from who they are and the authenticity of what they do when they are asked to kind of move into this traditional model that is required for funding. But you need funding. And if I can say anything else, the funding and developing the needed infrastructure and being sustainable and offering quality services and moving in integrity and efficacy, that's critical to healing. We hear too many times where they had a program and then it's gone. It was working and then she left. That's disruptive. They've had people come in and out their lives consistently. Your job is to implement something and be there. That's what you promised them. And in order to do that, you have to be sustainable. And so I do appreciate and value the capacity, but I do think sometimes for some individuals in the community, they're gonna have to get more comfortable and trusting and understand why this is required and how you operate it outside or within your home or on the block or whatever. There are some tweaks you're gonna have to make, but it's for the greater good and it's all connected to the healing. And a lot of people resistant to that. A lot of people resistant, but you know, that's hard. That's really hard. What else was missing?
Just listening to the both of you, I feel like what's missing is a real ecosystem. Because as you're talking, I think about the big mamas of the neighborhoods. Big mama can sustain with or without a grant, but the world is changing. So those micro grants are so important for the big mamas of the neighborhood because they're the ones creating the real impact. You know, well, not just them, but you know, when we speak of that. So I just wish we had an ecosystem where everyone fits, where Big Mama ain't got to change to fit inside this. Big Mama ain't got to fill out a grant because she dealing, you know, where we should be able to connect. I should be able to go to Peace for DC and say, Rachel, I need some help because I'm not that type of, you know, I can't file those type of grants, but I want to do the work. So just having an ecosystem and knowing that accountability is just so important for me.
And I think, you know, and I see I'm coming to you next. I agree, you know, I agree. And then there's this traditional piece to it, if I'm using your analogy in terms of Big Mama. Big Mama is respected. Big Mama has the ability to do something that either you got it or you don't. You're not trained to do this. You can get all the letters you want. It's sad, but it's the reality. There is the system. Now, you know, we can take this another angle. Is that the intentionality of the system where Big Mama can't tap into it? You know, some people may feel like, you know, the system is man-made, let's say that. And we understand that the system is designed by people, and it is all systems are created where everybody don't have a seat. You know, everybody's not equally invited in. And so I think for that, and to respect Big Mama, and I like just saying Big Mama, you done got me started. I'm gonna say but to respect who she is and what she represents, especially in the community, in the Black and brown community. We then gotta have some real conversations as the architects of the system as to, we created something that we didn't factor her in. And here's the thing, ask ourselves a question, do we want her here? Everybody don't want Big Mama at the table. I mean, I'm being honest, you know, and I'm not, so this gets to the issues around privilege and power imbalances and things like that. And so the architects of the system and those who hold the power and hold the systems up, there's some other pieces that play that where Big Mama can't come to the table. You know what? And it's not her fault. It wasn't even designed with her in mind.
That's why that was
It's unfortunate.
Micro grants are so important.
I
think about Linda Hardy Harper. I think about I always say the terminology, OSBJG. They create stuff for people like
Big Mama, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So it is space, and I guess it's coming. I mean, it's there.
It's not enough.
Yeah, it's not enough.
And so we force Big Mama or those who she represents to say, well, I pivot. And how much of the integrity of who she is lost in the pivot, you know? And so it's hard. It's hard. And so this is Chandra. I am one to be like, and I don't say this lightly. I'm kind of look at, yes, you want to dismantle systems and chip away at power imbalances. This is Chandra. But at the same time, I got to figure out how to work within this system and make some stuff happen. I have to do both. And some people don't want to do both, and I understand that. But for me, and I say that personally, and as the ED for Peace for DC, it is definitely naming and calling it out, but I gotta figure out how to navigate this, because we got work to do. And so, and if you wanna do the work, you're gonna have to build up the needed internal capacity, because you need the money to be sustainable. And it's hard, that's a hard pill for people, I get it, I get it. My friends in the back. Sure.
I think you mentioned, what's the responsibility of those that are holding up the system or maybe an architect of the system. So one wondering I have is, what's the role of schools? Like in what ways do schools, leadership or public school systems, create problems, or what opportunities are there for them to, find solutions?
You want to speak to that, Alexa? Come on up. See, you thought you was going to just sit and eat my cookies today. No. Come on up. From your perspective, by all means, what is the role of schools? Supporting gun violence about?
From my perspective, I'll give very small background. I went to Thurgood, so I graduated from Thurgood in 2020, and I wanted to be a lawyer, all the things, and I joined the gun violence intervention group, started at TMA. Some of you may know, if you're already in the area, about the 2 lives lost to gun violence, Paris and Zaire. So that, but I actually am from Georgia, so I migrated here, and that very maybe month before I moved, I had lost a friend to what do they call it? A double suicide. So it was, so it was timely, it was crazy for a school to already have that capacity for, infrastructure being built. And in my experience, unfortunately, it's really not the administration. It is not the administrators doing it. It's the teachers doing it and then going to the administrators and saying this needs to be done. Like, I'm not going to be your teacher if you're not doing this. I'm not going to be the culture builder in your school if this isn't getting done. So, I don't know, I think that's why I said the collective accountability, because I think, like, there's no PTA at TMA. We have it. We have something called, Parents of Warriors, but no parents show up. No parents come out. We also have, PAVE and things that they show up. So it's like, it's interesting. I feel like DC is very different. Like, I lived in like 7 states, and I say DC is very unique. It has a lot here. Like, pretty much everything I think you really need, you could find. But it's about finding it. It's about the people who have it, giving it. So to your question, I think schools are essential. I feel like if you look at, as a social studies teacher, if you're looking at the civil rights era and all of the movements in the United States, it was never just, Black power. It was Black power and. So I feel like schools are a great center to be a hub, but like they're not necessarily being used that way. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I would say like less silos and more community effort and actually being about the work, not just doing it for the Instagram reel or the notoriety of it, but actually like having it in you that you want better for your community, for your people around you. Because if you can make an ecosystem, but if everybody does not have the same vision and mission in mind, what is the purpose of the ecosystem? Then when you do your ecosystem, you have to include the entire community, the police, the schools, the parents, the children. Because just because they're kids, they still have a voice. Their opinions still matter. So getting the hospitals, everybody needs to be on the same accord with the same vision, but we say that that's what we're doing, but everybody's not. I'm competing with you, but we have the same goal in mind. There's no way we're going to be effective if I'm looking at you like, oh, she did that, let me go do something the same day she doing something to get more people. Like, who we hurting?
Yep. That drive for data and performance has become, a tool that can be weaponized like no other. Numbers, how many people you serve, and we want to know, it's how you use those numbers. And so my friend right here, I'm going to be quiet because I wouldn't bring you up, but no, she represents the HVIP program, and so that's the hospital-based violence and prevention program. And so, and I think that's your supervisor over there too. Hey, supervisor. And so With that program, so for those who are not familiar with the violence intervention, you have the community-based workers, violence interventions. We have the HVIP program where an individual who who is shot, comes into the hospital. The VI work starts at the hospital, just like the attorney is at the hospital. So again, this is that crisis response, trying to wrap those services, that system of care, and engage and support not just the survivor on all levels. Because really for HVIP, and I say this for you all as well, it's not just protecting the individual and supporting the individual who's shot. It's the family, but it's the community as well. Because here's the thing, if that retaliation happens, and you gotta understand, it is being planned in some instances while he or she or they are en route to the hospital. And so they are moving fast. They are moving fast and under-supported, under-recognized, and often undervalued. But let me say to my HVIP folks, we see you. We need you. We need you. Okay, I'm surprised Rachel ain't come up here with a clock and stuff. Yeah, look at her face. She's ready. She's normally that. The one thing I'll add in, and I'll say thank you, and this is something, I think we're leaving with some reflection points. We had another speaker, or he wasn't really, more of a conversation. He was not able to join us. What we really do have to figure out, how do we support youth gun violence survivors? We gotta figure this out. That is not an adult. That is somebody at a whole different place of development. The needs of a 13-year-old or 8-year-old or 17-year-old who's been shot is very different than the needs of a 40-year-old. We don't have a real differential response that is developmentally appropriate. And so if I was to answer that question in terms of what do I think is needed, I gotta center the youth. I do. It's easy for them to be plastered on the news. But what we haven't done is sat down and figured out how do we take care of young victims of crime, particularly in this space as we talk about gun violence survivors and their parents, because they have a different need. That family has a whole other need. And there has to be a way to support an 8-year-old who experiences this trauma and wrap him or her or them with the needed care so that we don't see what we know can likely be the trajectory and what's going to happen years to come, if not in the immediate future. So that's my little piece that I will add there. Thank you all. This has been really rich. I have appreciated not just the opportunity to moderate, but to share space with you all. I appreciate the feedback. And this was our second, attempt at this. And I will say its success is only due to you all and how you showed up. And I hope this has felt okay. I do. I'm gonna check. Anybody know me? I'm good at checking in. You feel okay? I hope this has felt okay, but please, 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 again, hard topic. Don't be surprised what your body may communicate to you after sitting in this space, so honor it. Thank you. Chicken sandwiches are there, and my new bread cookies.